How is it we moved to Vashon Island in the first place? Well, it was just after Pearl Harbor, and my husband, Donald, and I had recently met and married. Up to the time of our marriage, I had been living at home with my two children, Anne, 12, and Joan, 11, my mother, and two of my four sisters, in a brown house in the University District, where we had numerous pets, a great deal of fun, hordes of company, and hardly any money. I was working for a contractor who was building something or other, very vital, for the government at terrific expense in Alaska. I was paid $47.50 a week, which was never enough, but was considered marvelous pay for a woman in those days in Seattle, where it is still the prevailing idea that all female employees, bless their little hearts, would really rather be home baking Toll House cookies, and any male not down on all fours is automatically paid twice as much as the brightest female. Dawn, who was doing final test at the Boeing airplane factory, shared a rather dank, dark hillside duplex just off the campus of the University of Washington with an intellectual pal who read philosophy by candlelight, never shaved, tucked fish bones behind the cushions of the couch, and considered a thorough house cleaning the tacking of another Japanese print over another spot of mildew. Then Dawn's roommate suddenly decided to take his fish bones to Algiers, and Dawn asked me to marry him. We spent our weekend honeymoon, all that was allowed defense workers, in the apartment sans the roommate, but avec the mildew, an eviction notice from the landlord, who was tired of intellectuals, a shut-off notice from the gas company — gas had been roommate's responsibility, Dawn explained — and an old buddy of Dawn's who turned up in quite an unsteady condition and couldn't or wouldn't grasp the fact that good old Dawn was married. I was beginning to wonder if he was, especially as Boeing, for a wedding present, had transferred him to the graveyard shift, which meant that he would work all night, I would work all day, and we would see each other and the children briefly on Sundays. The eviction notice stated firmly that we were to be out of the apartment by the following Monday. From Monday to Friday, I visited practically every real estate office in the city. Roof overhead seemed to be this roommate's responsibility, and was told by each that there was nothing to rent, there never had been anything to rent, there never would be anything to rent, and there's a war on. Sunday evening, Dawn and Anne and Joan and I were sitting in front of the fire in his apartment, feeling like people without passports, when the very charming Japanese professor, who with his wife lived in the top part of the duplex, came down and told us that they were being sent to internment camp and we could have their apartment. We thanked him fervently, but felt like grave snatchers as we piled into the car and raced over to see the landlord, who was old and not friendly, and brought out a list 2 miles long of applicants who he said were of much longer standing and much more desirable and didn't have children. Dawn talked and talked in his quiet voice, and finally, grudgingly, the landlord agreed to let us have the apartment, but he called after us in a loud voice as we were getting in the car, "I expect you folks to tend to business now. No wild parties, and don't let the pipes freeze." The upstairs apartment was light and airy, had a wood-burning fireplace, a view of Mount Rainier, if you had good eyes, and a studio couch in an alcove for Anne and Joan. We were very happy and quite comfortable. Then came warm weather, and the normally quiet hillside around us suddenly exploded with shrieking children, barking dogs, yowling cats, and yoo-hooing mothers. Peddlers followed each other up our stairs like ants, and when they weren't banging on the back door, they were leaning on the front doorbell. Dawn made a large sign, "Defense workers sleeping. Please do not disturb." It didn't help at all. The peddlers pushed it aside and knocked under it. Dawn grew very pale and much doorer. The man across the street began digging up his vegetable garden. The people next door to him got a puppy. I decided that I had better start looking for a house. The only trouble was that in Seattle, where we lived, there weren't any houses for rent and none for sale for nothing, which is what we had. We did like the country, it is true, we still do, but we would have gladly moved into the police station if it had been for rent, furnished.